Well, thank you very much, Randy, and all of you for the invite today to talk at the Brown Bags. Um, it's a real pleasure to be able to introduce plants of Hawaii. Some of you may have seen me talk about this before, but let me just give you a little bit of background about myself, and then I'll talk a little bit about the project. And hopefully I can forward my slide. Come on, slide. All right. So just a little bit of background about me. I'm born and raised here in Hawaii and did my work at the botany department at the University of Hawaii from 2004 through 2013. Here's an example on this slide of some of the projects I worked on. I started working on Kiave, doing a comparative study of the two species that we have. Is that a little better? I'm trying to mute other people, sorry. A little bit of feedback. After that work, I had a really great opportunity to work with the Urban Forestry Council and Andy Kaufman on coastal bioshields, which took me to Samoa and to all of the islands in Hawaii to do coastal transects. And then finally, I finished up my dissertation with Sterling Keeley, working on hala, doing phylogenetics of Pandanus tectorius and its relatives across the Indo-Pacific. After that, I had to go away for a little while and do some postdoc work in Iowa and in the University of Washington. And actually today is my last day at the University of Washington. So from now on, I'll be full-time at the Bishop Museum. So about a year ago, I got a call from Barbara Kennedy and Clyde Imada at the Bishop Museum. And they said that they needed to add a botanist to their team. And they were hoping to think of some big idea projects that we could work on. And Clyde Imada mentioned that the real elephant in the room at the time was that the manual hadn't been updated since 1990 when it was published. There have been some subsequent updates to the Manual of the Flowering Plants of Hawaii in the form of checklists and online sites that have just updated some of the species that we have present in Hawaii, but there hasn't really been a formal update. According to the manual, we had 1,094 native taxa and 869 naturalized taxa in Hawaii. That's what is treated in the manual. And of course, the manual is just a really great resource for knowing and understanding plants in Hawaii, extensive discussion and identification keys, as you all know. But things change, unfortunately, for us. Today, we have 1,185 endemics, 131 species have gone extinct, at least for now. Perhaps we will rediscover some of these. Perhaps genetic tools will help to bring some of these back. Some of that DNA is sitting at the Bishop Museum, some of the last specimens collected, and we hope that in the future, the tools will be available to us to resurrect these. 109 species are considered indigenous today. We have 27 Polynesian introductions, 6,000 to 12,000 species in cultivation or only in cultivation, and unfortunately, 1,539 species that are naturalized, give or take. These numbers change, and for those of you who saw me give this talk a couple of weeks ago, I had slightly different numbers. But that means that there has been a 77% increase, 670 taxa, 77% increase in naturalized taxa in Hawaii since 1987, which is when the last pages of the Manual of the Flowering Plants of Hawaii were written. So that's an increase of about 20 taxa per year since that time. So our flora is dynamic. New taxa are introduced and become naturalized all the time. And as soon as that happens, the print dichotomous keys that we rely on to make identifications become outdated. Also, of course, as we all know, species concepts change over time. The names of taxa change over time. Different species concepts, synonymy, all of these cause great a whole lot of trouble when you're trying to keep and maintain a list of taxa. Um, other things about our dynamic flora, distributions are constantly changing. Things are moving and being found in different locations. Population sizes are changing. Outplanting happens, eradication happens. We really need to keep track of all of this. And I know that some of you are keeping track of all of this, or else we are really going to have a lot of trouble going forward. So when we started the project last year, we wanted to kind of reach out to the community and find out what the needs were. And at the time, we were just thinking about kind of identification issues. And so we sent out a survey in the early part of 2019. And I thank you, many of the people here present probably filled this out, so I appreciate that. And we asked several questions, and I have just a summary of those questions here. The first is, what is the primary tool that you use to identify an unknown plant in Hawaii? And that's what this pie chart is here at the top. And we found that actually the most common tool that people use is the Star Environmental website. They're looking at pictures and trying to identify something that they see in the field. 25.9% and 12% use the Manual of the Flowering Plants of Hawaii and the associated Flora of the Hawaiian Islands website hosted by the Smithsonian. We also asked the related question, how often do you use the following resources, to kind of get an idea of how frequently people are using them. And we had some very similar results. People are frequently using the Manual of the Flowering Plants of Hawaii, as well as the Flora of the Hawaiian Islands website and Star Environmental. Many of the other tools that may or may not be out there, including some of the image machine learning tools, people are not using very much. I think there's probably growing use of things like iNaturalist, but PlantNet and other things tend to not be used. Does anyone use? Oh, I shouldn't ask questions because everybody's on mute. Another question. Please indicate whether you would use any of the following resources if they were available. And just to point out here, the number one resource that people were asking for is an online multi-access key to the plant species in Hawaii. There is currently no key to all of the plant species that are found in Hawaii. There are only the dichotomous keys in the Manual of the Flowering Plants, and as we have added species, those have to our flora those have become less and less useful over time. Finally, just want to point out one last question that we asked. If the Bishop Museum hosted and curated an online repository for plant images, how likely would you be to contribute your own images? And 80% of people who responded said that they would be very likely to respond to contribute their images. So that really tells me that we have a great community out there willing to share and who want to make these resources available. I think it's really important too. I know these are available in many places on websites, but it's unclear what will happen if those various people who own those websites should decide that they don't want to support it anymore. There's a lot of great images on Twitter, on Facebook, but they're in various places and they're hard to find and hard to bring together onto one if you want to look at all of these at one time. That becomes especially true over time as names change. So our goal with this is to bring together a lot of these resources into one searchable platform that will be curated and maintained into the future. We also found the Laukahi Group's Hawaii Strategy for Plant Conservation. And as we read their objectives, we realized that a lot of what we wanted to do was captured here in these objectives: to recognize, document, and understand plant diversity, and to develop the capacity and public engagement necessary to implement the strategy. We felt that a website that was dynamic, easy to use, and captured a lot of relevant information about our flora would be a good, useful tool for both education and for reaching out to the community about plant conservation and invasive species issues. So we then asked ourselves, what can we do? So the Bishop Museum, in case you don't know, is the State Museum of Natural History and Culture. We are the official repository for all biological specimens in Hawaii. But we really want to start expanding our role from being just a repository of those specimens to really a repository of the data and the analytical tools needed to address key issues. We're currently talking about some of the key issues and how we can address them. And the two that we are really focused on are the issues of climate change and biodiversity loss. And the Plants of Hawaii website that we have started to build will really begin to address the issues of biodiversity loss by making sure we know what we have and by bringing all of that information about the plants of Hawaii into one place. So our mission is to innovate tools to make relevant data maximally useful to those natural resource personnel and to the general public as well. It's not the actual mission statement, but actually we are working on a mission statement right now that will be something like that, I hope. So many of you know some of the people that are working on this project, but let me just introduce you to some of the botanists working on POH, as we're affectionately referring to Plants of Hawaii as the POH team. So Clyde Imada, since he worked on the manual of the flowering plants of Hawaii as an editor, and he has been since that time maintaining a checklist of the known plants that exist in Hawaii, various checklists, whether it's native, naturalized, cultivated. And so he has that resource that he has curated has really been the foundation for Plants of Hawaii. And the entire team, Barb Kennedy, Clyde, Nick, Pumehana, and volunteers have been maintaining and curating those specimens, which represent just about all of the plants that we have living in our state. Kelsey Brock has joined our team recently, and she's been innovating new ways to use data. And she's been developing the HAPPY project, which is the Hawaii Alien Plants, I'm forgetting the words, informatics. I've probably got that wrong. If you're there, Kelsey, I'm sorry. I'll get the right words in a minute. And we are collaborating with our other colleagues at Bishop who work in culture, education, malacology, zoology, entomology, molecular biology, marine biology, and more. And that's a lot of the power of the Bishop Museum, and that we have all of these various staff covering the entire range of biodiversity, working together, trying to develop tools that will help and to aid a lot of what you are doing. Oh yeah, I'm the new guy. Okay, so let me introduce you to Plants of Hawaii. This is still a mock-up. It doesn't yet live on the internet where all of you can access it. But this is kind of how its form at the moment. And what Plants of Hawaii will be, it will be fundamentally a search engine at the front end. And so you could enter into this search box here, the name of a plant, a character, a distribution, and you would get a series of results, which would be all of the plants that match some or all of the criteria that you've entered. And you can tell that this is not a real version of this right now, because still the software developers have throns in there. Our plants don't have throns. Anyway, a couple of other things of features that we'll have. There will be a checklist builder where one can build a checklist of plants, and that'll have a map interface. And there will be several different identification tools, including a lucid key to the flora of Hawaii. So once you conduct a search, you will be brought to a series of species information pages. And if anyone has used Plants of the World online, we have used that as our model. So if you go out and do a search on Plants of the World online, search up Hawaii or acacia or anything, and you'll see some of the functionality that's there. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel here, so we are following a lot of what they have already innovated. So on each species page, we'll have up-to-date taxonomy. We are working on new descriptions, a lot of that based on the specimens that we have accumulated since the time of of the writing of the Manual of the Flowering Plants of Hawaii. And just so you know, we are starting with the information that's in the Manual of the Flowering Plants of Hawaii and adding to it. We'll have dichotomous keys, multi-access keys, and a character database, which is one of the things that's consuming a lot of our time right now, is building that. And the checklists tool. So the Plants of Hawaii site will be hosted on the Amazon cloud, and it's going to feature mapping tools by Google Maps. And what makes it really powerful is that it will not be a static site. The data will be connected to the International Plants Names Index, IUCN, GBIF, and others. It will be updating itself automatically to make sure that it is constantly up to date. And there's of course a lot of information that is not out there, such as the descriptions and a lot of the specimen information, which we will be adding to this already available data. And we're not going to just hold on to this data. The most of the Plants of Hawaii data will be available through an API. So these other websites will be able to talk to Plants of Hawaii and pull information. So for example, the Plants of the World online site has all of the species that are found in Hawaii, with a few exceptions, but they don't have any, they have very few descriptions. And so those descriptions could flow through our API and populate that information at Plants of the World Online, which is maintained by Q. Now, we have a lot of sensitive information in Hawaii with regards to our native species, and so we want to make sure that that is secure. What we would like to have is a secure login, and we're working on this, so that sensitive data will be available, but not to the general public. And that's something that really needs to be a community discussion, whether that what information we are making public, what information is going to be kind of access controlled. And that's one of the areas of feedback that I would like to get from all of you. A couple of things on the user experience. Users will be able to upload images very much like you would to any other site, but these images will be curated by BISH staff. We are not using this as a tool for people to say, hey, I don't know what this is, please identify it for me. But if people do have really great images of plants and we don't have similar images to them, we'd like to have those and make those available on the site. The multi-access key that I mentioned is currently being built. This is being powered by Lucid, and we currently have the entire flora in there, but we have started working on the Asteraceae, and we're just about finished with data entry on Asteraceae. Right now we have 245 characters and thousands of character states. So you can see the Lucid interface there that we have been looking at for a while now. And so for each one of these species, we are going through the manual and manually digitizing the information that is in the description and turning that into a searchable database, which is what Lucid provides. And so having that data in a structured database type format, along with georeferenced specimens, gives us great potential to do things. For example, we could take an area on a map and say, give me all of the species that have red flowers known from this area, and we can produce a checklist. Or we can look at what is the elevational gradient of leaf shape, for example, over a certain island. So really great research potential, really great functional potential for people doing resource management or who need to identify what they have. And this is just an example of some of those characters that we are recording for each of the species that we are looking at. So I mentioned Kelsey Brock, and she is a student at the University of Hawaii working with Kurt Daler. And this is her website that she has put up very recently. It's the Hawaii Alien Plant Informatics site. Hopefully I got that right earlier. And this is just bringing together a lot of really great information, a lot of which is already available in different places, but bringing it into one place where people can access it, use it, and make it more functionally useful to make management decisions. And I hope you can see the link there for this site. And there's a little bit of information. If you click on about, you'll get a lot more information that you can see. And this is, as she says here, decision support for invasive plant management. And so she was also working at the Bishop Museum doing plant identifications for us. And she independently had this really cool project. So we decided that these need to be merged. And so the Happy Project will be hosted on Plants of Hawaii and will be added to what our species checklist builder. And so you can see a simplified interface here where people could select an island, but then you can also select characters and other information in our database about plants and produce a checklist. If you are looking for invasive species in particular, then you could then further refine that search with a lot of the information that Kelsey is bringing in through the Happy Project. And a lot of that has to do with the weed risk assessment. All of that information she is turning into a database that could then be searched on criteria by criteria. She's also bringing in a lot of information from our partners, such as NTBG, the University of Hawaii, other herbaria, and people like many of you who are working in the field and may maintain your own database. All right. So I hope that has been a good overview of what we're hoping to do. But if not, I'll definitely take some questions in a minute. In order to make this happen, it's happening now. But in order to complete this work, we're going to need additional funds. The Hawaii Invasive Species Council was very generous in providing us with the funds to get this started. But we are going to be submitting an NSF grant soon, as well as the Institute for Museum and Library, IMLS, whatever the S stands for, the IMLS grant, to finish this project. We also need data. If people have data out there, or images or videos related to plants in Hawaii, or their pollinators or seed dispersers, and it's okay to share that information, we would love for Plants of Hawaii to be a home for that. We also need people. We need volunteers. Right now, we don't have money to pay a lot of people, but we are hoping that the grants will provide some money in the future. But if anyone has people who, or know of people who can volunteer, we need people to continue to database our descriptions. We are creating a database of all the images that we receive. We are georeferencing specimens. All of that needs to happen in order to make the Plants of Hawaii as great a resource as we hope that it can be. And we need more partners. We have spoken with the National Tropical Botanical Garden, and we think that there's great potential there for working with them, as well as various researchers at the University of Hawaii and several other places that we are talking with right now. And we love groups that have an interest in this to join us and work with us to make this information useful and available. I also need your ideas. And of course, we need time to get this all to happen. So people often ask how long this will take. So 4 years and forever is kind of what we're saying. It's dynamic and always up to date. We hope to be able to get all of the descriptions for the flowering plants of Hawaii, angiosperms, up there within 4 years. It may take a little longer than that if we continue to have delays, such as such as what we are living through now. But it will also be forever. This is not something that we are going to complete and then say it's done. It's constantly going to be updated as names change, as new taxa are naturalized, or new native species are found. We can very easily also add ferns and non-vascular plants after we finish the flowering plants. And why not algae as well? We should have the entire photosynthetic biota of Hawaii on this site. So hopefully some of you, hopefully some of you will have some ideas or thoughts for me about the project, or questions, or maybe data or images to contribute. But I'm happy to take any questions that you have.